Chapter 1: The Red Moon Rises. It started like any other fall evening in the suburbs of Denver. The leaves were crisp and golden, the air smelled of smoke and pine, and the night crept in early, chasing the sun behind purple clouds. But on every TV screen, every radio station, and every phone notification, the same alert kept repeating, once in a millennium, the blood moon returns tonight. Stay indoors. Remain calm. Frank Mathers sat in his apartment, half watching the local news while stirring sugar into his coffee. The anchor's voice was calm, almost excited. At exactly 9:13 p.m. Mountain Time, the Earth will pass between the Sun and the Moon, casting a total lunar eclipse. But this isn't any ordinary eclipse. Astronomers say this blood moon only happens once every 1,000 years. A rare alignment of celestial bodies will give the moon an intense, red glow, visible across most of North America. Frank sipped his drink and rolled his eyes. More like an excuse to sell telescopes. The anchor continued, some are calling it an omen, citing legends from ancient cultures that spoke of transformation, judgment, and darkness falling upon the world when the moon turns red. Of course, those are just stories, or are they? Frank clicked off the TV. Dramatic much? Downstairs, he heard his neighbors laughing, already preparing for their rooftop party. Dana, his neighbor and friend, had texted him an hour earlier, "Come up for drinks. You can't miss this moon." He thought about it. He hadn't been social much lately. Since the divorce, he'd mostly kept to himself. But tonight felt different. Like the air had a charge in it. Static. Something old and heavy. Outside, the sky had turned deep violet. The moon had risen, enormous and white, high above the mountains. People flooded rooftops and balconies, pointing, drinking, celebrating. By 9:10 p.m., Frank finally joined them on the roof. Carter, an ex-military guy who now worked security, handed him a beer. "Didn't think you'd show." Dana grinned. "Told you he'd come. You can't resist a good apocalypse." Frank smiled faintly. The air was electric, cool, alive. Then the clock struck 9:13 and the change began. Before their eyes, the moon turned crimson. Not a soft red, but blood red. Deep and raw, like a wound in the sky. The laughter faded. The crowd fell silent. Dana whispered, "It's beautiful." And then, someone screamed. A woman on the far side of the rooftop fell to her knees, clutching her head. Her skin pulsed. Her spine arched unnaturally. Carter ran to help her, but she jerked violently and let out a sound, not human, a guttural growl that echoed across the city. People backed away. More screams. On the street below, others collapsed. Their bodies twisted, reshaped. Bones cracked. Eyes glowed red. Frank could only watch in horror as the city around him, his neighbors, strangers, people he'd passed every day, began to change, and high above, the blood moon watched in silence. Chapter 2: When the Sky Turned Red. The rooftop turned to chaos. Frank ducked as the woman who had transformed leapt at Carter. Her jaw stretched wide, too wide, filled with sharp, animalistic teeth. Her eyes were glowing pits of rage. Carter, trained and fast, brought her down with a chair and kicked her off balance. She rolled and hissed, then bounded off the edge of the roof with a horrifying screech. Dana grabbed Frank's arm. "What the hell is happening?" Frank couldn't speak. His heart pounded against his ribs. Down below, dozens of people were convulsing, growing claws, losing their minds. One man burst through a convenience store window. A woman tore the door off her car. A deep sound rolled across the night, like thunder, but slower. A low rumble that seemed to come from the earth itself. More of them were changing. "Get off the roof!" Carter shouted. They fled for the stairwell as another screech pierced the air. Dana stumbled. Frank grabbed her, yanked her toward the stairs just as something slammed into the railing behind them. They descended the dark stairwell, footsteps echoing off the walls, joined by a dozen others, residents, strangers, anyone not turning into a nightmare. "Where do we go?" Dana panted. "The streets are not safe," Carter interrupted. "Underground, maybe. Or somewhere with height. Somewhere we can lock down." On the second floor, they passed a woman huddled in the hallway, whispering prayers, eyes wild. Her husband convulsed beside her, his spine snapping back with a sickening crunch. "Don't stop," Carter said. "Keep moving." Frank looked back just once and saw the man rising, twitching, snarling. His face was changing. He wasn't human anymore. They burst through the lobby doors into the street. Sirens wailed. Helicopters thundered overhead. The city burned. The blood moon shone so brightly now it lit the night like a second sun. One bathed in blood. Frank, Dana, Carter, and a handful of others sprinted down the street, ducking behind cars, avoiding twisted shadows that moved too fast and hissed when they caught scent of them. Frank felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't local, this was the end of the world. Chapter 3, State of Emergency. By morning, it was clear, the monsters weren't going away. The moon hadn't faded. It still hung in the sky, red and heavy, even as the sun attempted to rise. Daylight was dim and eerie, like the world itself had dimmed its brightness out of fear. Frank and the others had taken shelter in an abandoned shopping mall on the east side. The upper floors had been cleared and barricaded. They had food, water, and vantage points. But none of it brought comfort. At noon, a faint radio signal crackled through an old transistor. "This is the U.S. Emergency Broadcast System. A national state of emergency has been declared. Martial law is now in effect. All non-infected civilians must shelter in place or proceed to designated safe zones. Avoid infected individuals. Do not attempt to engage." The voice faded, replaced by static and the dull roar of distant screams. Dana leaned against the wall, her face pale. "Safe zones," she whispered. "There's still something out there. Somewhere to go." Carter stood near the window, watching the horizon. "We need to move before sunset. I've seen them. At night, they're faster. Stronger. We won't survive another one like last night if we stay here." Frank looked out at the dead city. Smoke rose from what used to be a hospital. A helicopter spiraled in the distance, trailing fire. Cars littered the streets like broken bones. "We head for Colorado Springs," Carter said. "Military base. If any place is still standing, it's there. Frank nodded. They had a destination, they had hope, but the blood moon was still there, staring down from the sky, and the monsters, once their neighbors, were waiting. Chapter 4: The Long Road South. They left the mall just after noon, a group of 8 moving fast between shattered storefronts and burned-out cars. Frank led the way with Carter, rifle slung across his chest. Dana followed close behind, helping Jake, a teenage boy they'd picked up that morning, his leg badly wounded. Colorado Springs was nearly 70 miles away. They didn't have a car. Roads were jammed or blocked. They'd have to cut through the edge of the city, stick to backstreets, and pray the creatures were still sleeping off their midnight frenzy. By 2 p.m., the sun still hadn't broken through the crimson haze. The blood moon remained faintly visible in the sky, now hanging like a bruise behind cloud cover. Why isn't it leaving? Dana whispered. Carter didn't answer. They passed a school playground littered with torn backpacks and blood-stained swings. Something moved inside the cafeteria window, but they didn't stop to check. At a pharmacy, they broke in. Dana and Frank grabbed antibiotics, bandages, anything useful. Jake whimpered as Dana injected him with something to lower his fever. In the corner of the pharmacy, Lena, a quiet woman in her 30s, knelt by a shrine of candles someone had built. "I heard about this," she whispered. "The blood moon. My grandmother told me. She said it shines light on the evil inside people. Makes it real. Turns it loose." Frank stared at her. "You think this is some kind of punishment?" She didn't answer. They moved on. By dusk, they reached the outskirts of a residential district. Carter held up a fist. "We camp here for the night. Houses look intact. Should be easier to defend." They found one with high fences, heavy curtains. Barricaded the doors. Took shifts at the windows. Frank sat near the fireplace, sharpening a piece of metal. His eyes drifted to Mike, one of the newer members of the group. He hadn't said much since joining them. Stayed quiet. Too quiet. That night, Dana couldn't sleep. Neither could Frank. Somewhere down the street, a scream echoed. And not far behind it, the sound of claws on asphalt. The creatures were moving again, and they were getting closer. Chapter 5: The Rooftop Refuge. At sunrise, if it could still be called that, the group moved again. The streetlight stayed on even in the dim daylight, flickering over bodies left sprawled across lawns and sidewalks. Jake's fever had worsened, but he was stable enough to walk with support. Dana refused to leave him behind. Carter consulted a paper map. "There's an old office tower a few miles west. 10 floors. Full view of the city. If we can reach the roof and barricade the stairwells, it's defensible." Frank nodded. "Better than walking blind through the dark." The journey took the rest of the day. By late afternoon, they reached the base of the tower, a monolithic structure with shattered glass doors and burnt signage, Silver Rock Financial Center. Inside, the lobby was a mess of dried blood, overturned furniture, and a flickering security screen. Carter led them cautiously up the stairwell, clearing each floor as they went. No signs of life or death. The rooftop was wide, reinforced, surrounded by low walls and broken satellite dishes. From up there, They saw the wreckage of the city, entire neighborhoods blackened, highways blocked with abandoned cars. Fires still burned in places, but it was quiet, too quiet. That night, they lit no fire. Just sat in a circle, sharing crackers and bottled water. The wind howled softly around them. Lena prayed again, whispering in a language Frank didn't recognize. Mike stared at the horizon, his eyes heavy, unfocused. Dana leaned against Frank, voice low. "Do you think it'll ever stop? The moon, I mean." "I don't know," Frank said. "But if it does, it'll leave behind a different world." Carter kept watch at the stairwell with his rifle. Jake slept in a sleeping bag near the vents, coughing in his sleep. As night deepened, Frank couldn't shake a feeling, like something was watching them. Not from the stairwell, but from up there, with them. That he looked around the group. Everyone seemed normal, but so had the first ones, before they changed. Chapter 6: The Hidden Beast. They made camp inside the rooftop utility shed, a metal box meant for storing tools, just large enough for the group to sleep in shifts. The building swayed slightly in the cold wind. Frank couldn't sleep. He watched Mike. Mike sat alone near the ledge, staring at the moon with sunken eyes. His skin looked pale, too pale. His fingers twitched like they didn't belong to him. Dana checked on Jake again. His fever had risen. She crushed another pill into water and made him sip. "Not enough medicine," she muttered. "He needs a real hospital." Frank walked over to Carter. "Something's wrong with Mike." "I know," Carter said quietly. "He's sweating when it's cold. He won't eat. And he hasn't slept since we left the pharmacy." "Think he's turning?" "Not fully. Not yet." Suddenly, a crash echoed from the stairwell. Everyone jumped. Carter raised his rifle. "I'll check." But it wasn't from below. It came from the rooftop, behind the air conditioning unit. Frank crept around the corner. There, Mike stood doubled over, gasping. His veins bulged under his skin. He clutched his stomach like something inside was trying to claw its way out. "Mike," Frank said, stepping closer. Mike spun around. His eyes, glowing faint red. "I didn't hurt anyone," he shouted. "Not yet. I'm fighting it." Frank raised his hands. "We believe you. But you need to stay calm." Mike's voice cracked. "You don't understand. It's in me. I feel it. Every time the moon rises, it gets stronger." Carter appeared behind them. "We can't risk it." Dana knelt beside Mike, checking his pulse. "It's slow. He's not gone. Not all the way." "We leave at first light," Carter said. "If he turns before then, I'll do it," Mike whispered. "Don't let me become one of them." That night, no one slept. They took shifts, watching Mike, but even under the blood moon, he didn't change. He just stared up at the sky, shaking, whispering something over and over. "Not me. Not me. Not me." Chapter 7: The Man Behind the Eyes. The rooftop was quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't bring peace, but dread. The moon hung low in the sky, like a red eye refusing to blink. It was Frank's turn to keep watch. He sat by the stairwell door, rifle on his lap, listening to the slow breathing of the others behind him. Mike lay curled under a blanket, still trembling. his eyes shut but twitching under the lids. Carter snored softly. Dana was stretched out beside Jake, her hand on his chest, checking his heartbeat with every breath, and then, a sound. A soft scrape of metal. Barely there, Frank stood up. He moved slowly along the edge of the rooftop, checking the shadows. Nothing. Then he heard it again, but this time, it was a voice. Help. He turned, rifle raised. Lena was gone, her blanket lay empty, twisted. Frank's heart hammered in his chest. He jogged across the rooftop and shook Carter awake. She's missing. What? Carter sprang up, grabbing his rifle. They woke the others. A fast, silent search followed, checking corners, sheds, stairwells. Then Dana screamed. They found Lena's body behind the ventilation unit, slumped in a pool of blood, her neck twisted at an unnatural angle, her eyes were wide open. No sign of a struggle. No sound. No warning. Someone was close enough to kill her, Carter whispered. Dana backed away, hands shaking. It wasn't from outside. It was one of us. Silence settled over the group like frost. All eyes turned to Mike. He sat motionless near the edge, blood drying on his cheek. I didn't, he whispered. I was asleep. Frank? Carter said. You saw him. Frank didn't know what to say. Mike had been still the whole time, but what if something took over? Something that could move without memory. Dana grabbed Frank's arm. What if it's not Mike? What if it's someone else, faking? Jake coughed from his blanket. He talked in his sleep. Said her name. Said Lena. Everyone looked at Mike. He slowly turned his head, eyes glowing faintly. Because I dreamed it, he whispered. I saw her face. I saw it happen before it did. Carter raised his rifle. Don't, Frank said, but something was wrong. Mike's skin shimmered, just for a second, like scales underneath. His breath fogged the air even though it wasn't cold. I'm still me, Mike pleaded. But it's getting harder. They tied his hands. Gave him space, but everyone knew, the beast was already inside the walls. Chapter 8, Judgment at Dawn. The night dragged on forever. No one slept. Not even Jake. They sat in silence, listening to the howling wind and the creaking of the rooftop shed. From far away, screams echoed from the city, sporadic, desperate. Then, slowly, the moon began to dim. Frank looked up and felt it before he saw it, the pull, the tension, the weight that had pressed on their chests all night. It started to lift. Red faded to pink. Then to pale gray. The blood moon was waning. Sunrise, Dana whispered. It's over. Carter checked his watch. 6:18 a.m. Jake stirred. His fever had broken. His eyes opened fully for the first time in days. I'm hungry, he said. Dana laughed, choking on tears. Mike sat on the edge of the roof, staring at his hands. They looked normal now. No shimmer, no twitching. He looked at Frank. I made it. I think I beat it. Frank didn't answer. Carter stepped forward, rifle in hand. Doesn't matter. Mike blinked. What? You changed, Carter said. You killed Lena. I didn't mean to. That doesn't matter either. Frank stood in front of him. He's not a threat anymore. Look at him. We don't know that, Carter said. We can't take the risk. The others gathered around. Dana stood beside Mike. He fought it. He never attacked us. That means something. Carter looked around at the rest of the group. You're all forgetting what we saw. Eyes glowing red. Skin crawling. That thing inside him isn't gone. It's just sleeping. I won't turn again, Mike said. I swear it. Carter raised the rifle. Frank stepped in front. You shoot him, and we're no better than the monsters. Carter didn't flinch. For a long second, it looked like he might do it anyway. Then he lowered the weapon. Fine, he said. But he doesn't come near me. Or Jake. Ever again. Mike nodded slowly. Fair enough. They sat in silence, watching the light grow on the horizon. The moon had faded, but its legacy remained. Chapter 9, Aftermath. The government broadcast came through 2 hours after sunrise. A voice, calm, distant, echoed through battery-powered radios and cracked phone screens across the country. This is a national emergency update. The blood moon phenomenon has passed. Military forces have regained control of key urban centers. Reports of mutations have decreased significantly. If you are alive and able, proceed to the nearest designated safe zone. Emergency personnel are on site to provide assistance. Frank sat beside the broken antenna, holding the radio to his ear. The others gathered close. Casualties are estimated in the millions, the voice continued. Entire towns remain uncontactable. We will rebuild. But the world has changed. And we must remain vigilant. Because next time, we might not be so lucky. Frank turned it off. Jake sipped water. Dana sat beside him, her hand in his. Mike stood at the edge of the rooftop, silent, unreadable. Carter loaded his rifle, eyes scanning the streets below. No one said it, but they were all thinking the same thing. What if it comes back sooner? What if it never really left? Lena's name stayed in the back of Frank's mind that he walked over to Mike. The man looked tired. Haunted. You gonna be alright? Mike nodded. If I turn again, I want you to be the one to end it. Frank didn't answer. The wind picked up. Somewhere, far away, the world groaned as it tried to wake from a nightmare. But nightmares don't end when you open your eyes, they just change shape. Epilogue echoes in the light. 2 weeks later. Somewhere in the Nevada desert. A government convoy rumbled down a dirt road, kicking up red dust that clung to the tires like dried blood. 3 armored trucks. 1 black SUV. A helicopter hovered far above, circling like a vulture waiting for a reason. Inside the SUV, a man in a gray suit stared through tinted glass. Is the site secured? He asked without turning his head. Yes, sir, replied the agent in the front seat. We've cleared a 5-mile radius. Drones picked up trace radiation, but no biological activity. The man nodded slowly. Show me. They arrived at a crater, nearly 200 feet across. Scorched earth. The smell of sulfur. Burned trees clawed at the sky like skeletal fingers. In the center of the pit, under a canvas tarp, something pulsed faintly. Like a heartbeat. Red. Then dark. Then red again. A scientist approached, her hazmat suit caked in dust. "We found it buried 10 feet down," she said. "Whatever it is, it wasn't natural. We ran a spectral analysis. It matches the wavelength emitted by the blood moon." The suited man stepped closer to the tarp that he pulled it back. Underneath was a black sphere. Perfectly round. Smooth as glass. And inside it, something moved, slow. Deliberate, watching. The man's face didn't change. But his voice lowered to a whisper, "It's not over." The scientist frowned. "Excuse me." He turned to her. "It was never over. We didn't survive the storm. We passed the test." She looked confused. "Test?" He smiled faintly. "The moon was just a warning." Behind him, the black sphere pulsed again. This time, it didn't stop.